the interesting thing that we talked about in poker is that, and why it's how important it is to be really honest with yourself when you're playing, guys, is that you can justify pretty much any play in poker, and people that are smarter than me could 100% justify, Taylor Cavey could justify pretty much anything in poker, and he would probably win the argument most of the time, regardless if he really knows it's a good idea or not. So it's really important to be honest with yourselves, because you can always justify things as being a good player or not, or a bad play by your opponents, but in reality, you're probably going to know the difference.
Yeah, my experience with coaching has been usually like in the beginning of the coaching sessions is I will have the coach tell me something that I don't agree, and I immediately say why I don't agree. And I'm very reactive in the beginning, but I'm always open to change my mind, of course. And usually that's what happens. Like I give him his arguments, and he just shows me why I'm wrong, and I adjust and move on.
And Daniel's really good because he's a very open mind and also very studious. So it's very good. He spent a lot of time going over my notes and responding to them and things like that. And I wasn't saying that you weren't being honest at all. In fact, I think you're being very, very honest with yourself. The interesting part, though, is that it is just really a constant idea of you have to be self-confident in poker, but also at the same time, you have to be completely honest with yourself, which is sort of a weird dynamic a lot of the times. Okay, a couple of interesting hands. First of all, once he checks to us, easy bet with Jack 10 here. If the pre-flop raiser is checking to us, we should be stabbing almost all the time. Unless we have a really good reason not to, or we have really a lot of history with the player. Now, with Ace-Jack, I like checking back here a lot. I think occasionally you could actually bet for value here, but you will be in a scenario sometimes, like we talked about, where you might have to be calling the river with Ace-Jack high if we bet the flop. Instead, what I prefer to do is to see his reaction on the turn. And I think poor players will almost always tell you where you are in the hand based on their reaction on the turn, such as if they check here, I think we're going to be good almost all the time, unless they have a really strange hand, such as deuces or threes. But I think almost all the time, if he checks the turn, we can just bet for value here, like Daniel did. I like to play a lot. The river's sort of interesting. When I saw this at first, I really wanted to bet here, and I still go back to, I think this is a really thin value bet that you can make here. I think this would be a good spot to bet $3 or $4. He's absolutely not the type to turn this into a check raise bluff or something like that. Sure. So when we don't have to worry about being bluffed, I think we can go for really thin value. Again, checking back, not really something I'm going to be super worried about that you did, but I think it is actually a really nice spot to bet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just it's a matter of not being scared about what you've seen thus far, or seeing how crazy the board runs out, but still just going back to what is my read of his range on each street. Well, we know he had a super wide range on the flop, and then on the turn we thought that his range was super weak, something like maybe he was calling with the queen of clubs or the king of clubs, something like that. So when we think about his overall range, even though it's a pretty crazy board, and we do have a lot of showdown value, trying to extract that really thin value is going to separate the good players from the really good players. I like, by the way, folding 6-9 suited here in the small blind. We talked about 2 videos ago that we need to be more tight in the small blind. Because even if we've been tight at the table, which Daniel's been very, very tight, a big blind regular is still going to call it the really wide range regardless of how tight you've been. So therefore, it's a really nice spot.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest basic mistakes of most regs and most players at these games is they have huge small blind opening ranges, but totally huge, and I just take advantage of it whenever I can, of course.
I totally agree with that.
You have guys even regs that play decently post flop, but they're opening 30+% on the small blind, and I just think that's super exploitable.
Yeah, and I can tell you from my own experience that I saw a big problem in my game too, and how I was compensating with it, and I was actually still winning with opening a really wide range, was that I was just barreling like crazy. But even though I was still winning with that strategy, a far more plus EV strategy would have been just to tighten up a lot. People would still think that I'm going to be barreling a lot, and therefore if I could just barrel more for value, that proved to be a far more effective strategy than what I was doing previously.
Right.